Good evening and welcome to tonight's edition of Fact Sheet live on eTV, live on Facebook and live wherever you are this evening. Tonight, if you've joined us, it's all about the fact, it's all about the issues of national interest, it's all about shaping the conversation and setting the agenda. Here, we talk tough, we don't mince words, and we say it as it is. Tonight we are talking about the state of the security of our nation, or should I say, the state of insecurity in this country. I'm sure for those who have not been following the conversation since last week, you'll be wondering why I'm talking about insecurity or the security of our nation. A journalist was picked up, or should I say, arrested, interrogated, and per the narrative he gave after, it tells you this journalist had been assaulted, this journalist had been brutalized, and the whole country is talking about it. One would have thought that this would end there, until we heard that in the Ashanti region, Kumasi, a national security coordinator was also assaulted, brutalized, handcuffed, bats of a gun used to hit him, and all these people are supposed to be national security operatives. So we ask, who is a national security operative? What is the national security? What's their core mandate? You, as the viewer of this show, do you even know your rights if you are to be interrogated or questioned by any operative? Be it national security, we'll be finding out who they are, the CID, an army officer, whoever it might be. Do you know your rights? Should we be concerned about how security operatives are conducting themselves, especially after the Ayawaso West Wagon incident and the Emil Short Commission's report, which government issued a white paper on some aspects of that report? The recommendations therein, did we follow it through, especially with the revelation from Caleb's incident that, oh, Mr. Azugu was there after all? Tonight, we are talking about you, we are talking about me, we are talking about our rights as citizens and the actions and activities of the national security and its operatives. That's our focus tonight on Fact Sheet. My name is Samuel Chen. We're taking a short breather. When we come back, I will introduce you to my guest who would help me understand the issues when it comes to security matters in this country. Stay with us. All right, so you're welcome back. My name is Samuel Chen, and you're welcome to Fact Sheet tonight on eTV. Every Tuesday, we have discussions about our nation, Ghana. And I told you prior to the commercial break that I was going to introduce to you my guests for tonight and the focus for our discussion this evening. We're talking about the national security brouhaha, the concerns that are being raised by Ghanaians as to, you know, the actions and inactions of operatives of the national security, and whether we should be having a conversation about reforms in the national security apparatus and its setup, especially on the back of the Emil Short Commission's report and matters arising. My guests to help me have this conversation are Nanaya Akwada, who is the Executive Director for the Bureau of Public Safety, and Mr. Adams Bonham. He would also help me for us to have this conversation. He is a security analyst, and I'll be picking their thoughts on this matter. They're well seasoned in the manner or in the matter of security. Gentlemen, good evening.
Good evening.
All right, so let me say that Mr. Bonham will be joining us via Zoom tonight, and so I'll be moving to him once I'm done with Nanaya in the studio now. So tonight we're talking about the security of our nation and, you know, the actions of national security operatives. But what people are asking themselves is, when we talk about national security, who or what is national security, and what's their core mandate?
Well, let me say good evening to your viewers. And then quickly, let me also thank you for the opportunity, because in times like this, those of us who apply ourselves in security, matters like this make us cringe. You know, it makes us very, very uncomfortable. And the sad part is when, or if you have friends outside who respect you so much, for the place that you occupy and the system that you are helping run. When you see such spectacle or such news dominating the airwaves for almost a week now, it can be very, very, very discomforting and in some cases quite scandalous. The national security institution, as an institution in any country, let me just summarize, but their core mandate ultimately is to work in the interest of the country. And the country is the people. So your core mandate is to work to promote the preservation of life, to work to promote the interest of the state itself. So if, as far as you're working to enhance the abilities and the capabilities of individual citizens, you are inadvertently building the country. If you look at the mandate as set out in a strategic document probably available online by the Ministry of Interior itself, it states, apart from providing intelligence for the executive, the commander-in-chief for that matter, apart from ensuring that they are able to maintain our unity as a state through intelligence, they are also there to provide economic intelligence to business communities. So one of the roles of the National Security Agency is also to look at either the continent or the sub-region and say that, look, there are these business opportunities springing up. Either we advise the state to move in, empower people to dominate the space, across Africa, or to give business, the enterprise level, provide them with information that will help them, expand their space and dominate. Because as you are seeing, the world now is moving. Is not the strongest, is not the one who has the biggest bomb, but is the one who has the largest economic might. And so their mandate is wide and sparse, but ultimately they are expected to provide intelligence information that will ultimately lead to the protection of lives and properties and for the advancement of our economic interests.
Are they a formed unit? I mean, is that some kind of a unit, which is standing, where, like, we have the Ghana Police Service is a standing unit, the Ghana Army is a standing unit, the immigration is a standing unit. Are they that sort?
Well, when you talk, the nomenclature is quite a bit funny. When you talk about national security, the police are part of the national security architecture. NADMO is part of the national security architecture. All key aspects of our space, okay, I call them key because if they fail in their mandate, it affects a wide number of people. A critical part of your citizenry is national security. So you can even look at the agriculture ministry as being part of the national security architecture. You understand? So if you look at national security as national security, is the bringing together of core elements that make up a country. The core, okay, they make up a country.
Let me rephrase my question. What I meant to ask
I'm actually proceeding.
Okay.
So, but when you take national security as an institution, which we have in our country now, so I was just giving you a picture that national security in broad terms brings aboard all of the core key institutions, okay, that have a bearing on human security, economic security, and all those things. But we have also created an institution as one institution that focuses, or that is going to be like the fulcrum around which all of these are coordinated. So for instance, if you take a security coordinator in a region, his work is to coordinate activities of all the pseudo security institutions. Okay, his activity is to coordinate intelligence across board. You understand? So if there is one department that whose head every morning sees the president is the national security minister. You understand? So because they coordinate intelligence from across board, and then they in turn relay this information to the commander-in-chief, or they relay the information to defense, or they relay the information to agric, or they relay the information to, they coordinate such activities. And basically that is what a national security institution exists to do.
Again, let me rephrase. Have they got a standing unit, as in, for want of a better word, standing army?
Well, that, of course, as a country, we can decide what we do with our national security institution, but best practices across the world indicates that they do not have a standing force, more like an armed unit. You understand? It's like if you go to the United States of America, the Homeland Security operatives do not always come bearing arms. I mean, recruited for Homeland Security, unless maybe they've been co-opted from other policing institutions or other, arm-bearing institutions. So many have argued that, I believe you are literally trying to establish whether the armed unit within the national security institution is a thing that we have to go down. It depends on country to country. Of course, I indicated to you that the best practice elsewhere does not show. I'm yet to see one security ministry, national security institution, that comes with an armed unit, because I indicated to you that it is around them that all the other security agencies revolve. So if they work mainly with intelligence is their oxygen. A national security institution that does not feed and supply intelligence is not a national security institution. Perhaps it's an elevated policing institution.
Well, I'll come back to you, but let me speak to Mr. Bona as well and ask a few questions as to the institution of national security, because I'm asking myself a lot of questions as, Nana, you were speaking. I know the military has an intelligence unit. I know the police has its intelligence unit. I know other institutions may have their own intelligence units. I know the defense ministry gets fed all this information. So I'm asking myself, do we need a national security, ministry, when all these institutions have intelligence units that gather intelligence, and either they give it to the Ministry of Interior or the Ministry of Defense? Especially the recommendation by the Ayawaso West Wagon and a short report, which spoke about the factor of duplication when it comes to the roles of different ministries and agencies and portfolios in the security architecture of our country. Mr. Bona, with each of these institutions having its own intelligence unit, do we necessarily require a coordinator to coordinate it?
Well, good evening, and good evening to my colleague Nanaya Akwada. He owes me lunch. I'm sure he would try and organize that within the week. Yes, we do need a coordinating agency that would have to coordinate the activities of the other relevant stakeholders. I didn't actually get most of the things my colleague in studio mentioned, but I don't know whether he mentioned the goal of national security, but if he didn't, I would have to probably put that out there. The Ministry of National Security exists to formulate, coordinate, monitor, evaluate the implementation of security and intelligence policies through the deployment of skilled human resources and modern technology for stakeholders to enhance security, freedom of citizenry, and national development. And so you see, we have an amorphous wing of the national security, which is not supposed, which is an illegality. So we've got to dissociate the entire national security architecture from the operational wing of the national security. The operational wing of the national security has no space in our modern security architecture. It is outlawed. It is not per the Constitution. It's not supposed to be there. This came as a result of where we've come from. We came from a military regime that ushered in the 1992-93 Constitution, Fourth Republican Constitution. And for the then military leaders to have a firm grip of how the security architecture works, decided to have something that looked like a standby for something small. But even during the Rawlings's regime, this was not actually formalized. And so mine is that over the years, political leaders have found the need to smuggle this, to make it a permanent, call it DEX, at the national security, until 2020, when the Intelligence Act, when we had an amendment to now call it a ministry. It was supposed to just be a secretariat that coordinated the, what do you call it, all the other agencies, just a secretariat. And that secretariat, if I may put it, with a council, and that is chaired by the President of the Republic. And so that was supposed to have the leader being called a coordinator. And so over the years, some would have ministers, some would just maintain. The NDC, I think, would usually have a coordinator somehow, usually. The MPP would have, a minister. Now we are now going to have, per the amendment, we are now going to have ministers heading that ministry. But the illegality that is now have had a seat at the national security is what we should be talking about. So if you went to all the regions in Ghana, we are supposed to have the then BNI, which is now NIB, I think so, which is now NIB, yes, the National Intelligence Bureau, right? These guys are there. I mean, I voted in the Upper West region in Issa. There was a young man who I think is a district national, I think he works with he's attached to the BNI there, or the now NIB there. When I voted, he came and spoke to me. We had a conversation. I mean, he looked just ordinary like you. We had a wonderful conversation. He was not carrying gota. There was nothing that indicated that this young man was working with the intelligence agency. So upon further interrogation, I asked him out because the way he started talking, I realized that this young man probably would have been sent there on reconnaissance basis to come do some work and leave. Later, I got to know he was working with the district, national, BNI. Ordinarily, I wouldn't have gotten to know. But you and I know that when you go to Chobas in Ghana, around the ministries area, around Choco and all those places, you see people, these young men wearing dark glasses, this young man wearing, excuse me to say, some Katamantu suits, and they are carrying radios. And they come And the moment they get there, they announce themselves, yeah, national security for NABA. Then they give them a seat, and everybody knows they are national security. So the question you ask, do we need them? Yes. So for instance, the US, they have FBI, they have the CIA. So the FBI deals with more of their internal intelligence gathering and coordinating and the rest. The CIA is usually attached to their economic interests. So for instance, if the US had, let's say, I don't know which, let's say one of their oil, one of their big economic interests, you would not be surprised that there will be CIA personnel working in there. If you go to the American embassy here, they have attachés who are there. These guys are there, and sometimes they are sent around the countryside. They go in as, missionaries, they go in as people working with NGOs, and they collect intelligence that they will feed to their country so that if anyone wanted to do them any harm, they would have that information. If you take, for instance, the United Kingdom, they have a similar thing. So in our country, we need the national security, but not the operations wing. Those are attacks. The operations wing of the national security, which is now a standby force. They have an armory, they have AK-47s, they have all sorts of weapons, which has been outlawed. It's not supposed to be there. Per the Milshot Commission report, these people are not supposed to be there. If they gather intelligence per their core functions, if they gather intelligence and they feel that there's going to be some attack on us by air, they will have to inform the chairman of the National Security Council. The National Security Council chairman would have to inform his Minister of Defense. Minister of Defense would have to pass that information on to the DI, the Defense Intelligence. The Defense Intelligence that is the intelligence unit of the military. They then would pick up that intelligence and see, do we need some ground-to-air launchers? What do we need? Then they put all that information. If it has to do with immigration, that is passed on to the interior. Interior would get its immigration officers to deal with it. If it has to do with internal chaos, the police is there. If the police can't, per executive instrument, the executive order, the president would order the military to take control. These are the functions of the national security, the bigger national security. So literally, I don't know if I've answered you.
Before you proceed. Now, all this tells us that this operational wing that you speak about, the scenario where you create of young men supposed to be national security operatives who go to a chopper and they identify themselves. If the national security, as it's supposed to be, was to be co-opting operatives from different, policing institutions like the Army, the Ghana Police, Immigration, and co. These are well-trained officers who would know how to handle themselves in public. Would we have this situation?
No, we simply would not have had this situation because, first of all, that is supposed to have been the case. So the national security, as if they have the intelligence, they have the research unit. I mean, they are supposed to be doing other functions. When the need be, and they have to co-opt. They co-opt them in. Once they finish whatever they are doing, they are, redeployed back to wherever they are coming from. If we have that, then these people, you are seconded. Eventually, you are redeployed back to your unit. But unfortunately, that is not the case. We wouldn't have had this situation we are talking about today. So as far as I'm concerned, it is an illegality that has persisted and has existed at the National Security Ministry. And some of us have been talking about it. Honorable Kandapa is superintendent over an illegality, which he must deal with. He's not dealing with it. The president is the chairman of the National Security Council. He's superintendent over an illegality, which he must deal with it. He hasn't dealt with it. He is the chairman of the National Security Council as a president. He is a human rights activist. He is a human rights activist lawyer. For the first time, somebody who has fought all his life as a human rights activist and an advocate and as a lawyer And this is not someone's own imagination. I mean,
All right.
most of us, I'm old enough to have, encountered, now our president, Nana Akufo-Addo, and Kufuor and Bush, what's the name? Is it?
The Mills and Mahama.
No, they no. He stood before Kufuor came. What is it? Edubuahin. To have a, yes, as student leaders, these people met us when some of us were, student leaders back days. They came to various campuses at most of our NOOCS conferences. They came to meet us to tell us what, why we should vote for the MPP, because the MPP stood for, the right of citizens. The MPP would not brutalize people. The MPP will not do this. We believe them because Kufuor is a lawyer. We knew Edubuahin to be one of the people who actually orchestrated. He was part of the reasons why we had the Fourth Republic. He kept on pushing Rawlings, JJ. So mine is that I am not new to, I will not need any historian to tell me about Nana Addo and what he did. And you would hear him those days, he was much younger. So for me, I feel sad that under his reign today, how many years on, we have this brutality going on, and you will have party faithfuls who seem to be glorifying it, young people who don't know, also glorifying the brutality we are seeing. I think gone are those days. So we've got to speak truth to power.
Let me come to the studio and speak to Daniel and pick his thoughts on the rights of a citizen, an operative, be it the standing force one or the seconded one. What rights do we have if an operative says you are under arrest? A national security operative says you are under arrest. Now, in that respect, I'm asking that what constitutes interrogation for a national security operative? My right to a lawyer. I'm asking all of these things because we have had instances where people have been picked up by the national security, and the feedback we have gotten is that even access to their lawyers was a problem. My rights as a citizen when arrested by an operative, and then how I handle myself.
Well, very well. Your question is very loaded, but I'll try and do justice to it. The national security as an institution in across the world, they have been given so much sweeping powers that their powers are so intrusive sometimes that, and such powers too, most of the time are sanctioned by the state. And so it is advised that whenever you have an engagement or you come in contact with national security agents, one, you must be advised that you are coming in as an underdog because they may come bearing arms. They don't always come. Even when they come in jackets like I am in now, they almost all the time, have concealed weapons.
Are they supposed to carry weapons?
I think that's a standard rule for all state security, most state security agents. I mean, that is a standard rule. Okay. I mean, detectives come with weapons, FBI come with weapons, CIA come bearing weapons. They always do.
Is it not circumstance based? Like, for instance, in the case of, Caleb and Zoe, should they necessarily wield weapons?
No, at the risk of deviating from your earlier question. Bearing a concealed weapon and, displaying same are two different things. Okay. If I come in here, if I walk in here as a national security operative, my weapon is concealed. No one is agitated, no one feels intimidated, and that's it. All you probably will know is that that's a man from the BNI. He's been sent here to come and ask us a few questions. And under no circumstance would they even flip off their jacket for you to see that they are bearing arms. Okay? So that's the standard for most of the security agencies. So when they come in, no matter how smooth or sweet they talk you, if you don't see them carrying AK-47s or machine guns, don't be deceived. They are almost always armed. And so the best, from the public safety point of view, the best is always to comply. The best is always to request of them certain key questions like, why are they arresting you? And then for what offense, if you like. And then if they are not reading your Miranda rights, you have every right to insist that you have to see a lawyer or call your lawyer. In the worst case scenario, what you are expected to do is to demand that you are taken to the nearest police station, especially if they come without any proper identification like we have seen in recent times. Okay, but because of the sweeping powers that national security institutions and operatives are almost always granted by states, it is very important that if you come in contact with them, you comply. There is something that we teach in active self-protection, that you don't have to be allowed to be moved from where you are to a secondary location at any time. If they come in without any identification, you must do everything you can to ensure that they do not move you to a secondary location without anyone else knowing.
But here is the case: you stand the risk of agitating them where they would use brute force to move you.
Well, we are looking at our national security operatives as we have now, which of course all of us are saying that the way they act, one, they are unprofessional, they use crude methods, and they most of the time violate your rights. It's difficult for me to ask you to insist on your rights, because if you do, you might end up getting shot, and eventually they will end up going to sleep behind their wives. So whatever happens when you have to deal with this current crop of what I refer to as rogue elements within the national security institution, you must be very careful. You must be very careful, because the national security, like I indicated to you, they are given so much sweeping powers because they need those powers in order to be effective sometimes. So one, the lawyers are arguing that they do not have any right to, some say they do not have rights to seize your electronic devices unless they have a court order. But they can actually seize them without a court order and go and justify before the magistrate or the court that they actually took this. For instance, if they have every reason to say that, look, we had to take custody of his electronic device because it is wired to a bomb sitting at the Flagstaff house. It's not time for me to go and see a judge before I come and collect it. I have to collect it, and they have powers to do that, to justify later. So it is very important. But as to whether they have powers to go in after they have seized it, indicating that once we have this laptop with us, the threat is now in our control. We can now control the threat. They have no business going in there. Those are legal matters that I do not have what it takes to go in.
Is there not a danger in this where people operate without identifications? People operate where your rights are being subdued. Where, for instance, in the case
no, that's clear illegality. That
yes,
one, there is no room for it in the scheme of things.
The danger is the case of impersonation, where criminals may impersonate national security operatives as well. Because if the main national security operatives don't identify themselves, if they operate with this crude methodology, can't criminals also do the same?
Yes, and that's why I'm saying that, and that's the reason why all of us are talking against what has happened in times past and what is still happening. That is the danger, because we could be here having a program, somebody will just walk in and say, I'm a national security operative, I've been asked to pick all of you up to headquarters. You say, where is your ID, which shows that you're a national security operative. In a proper jurisdiction, he's supposed to show you his ID. You understand? He's supposed to show you his ID. and in a proper jurisdiction, if you are still not convinced and you say, look, I want us to report to the nearest police station before I go with you, he's supposed to comply. Because they are, look, proper jurisdiction, security operatives are taught to de-escalate matters. That's why if you find yourself in trouble in the US, UK or wherever, you find a police officer literally wooing you, begging you, or the police, I'm sorry, I really understand where you're coming from, but I'm doing my job, please, I'm sorry, please. Well, now you're back. Kasade, sweet talk, he's de-escalating matters. In our country, it's not like that.
But why is it like that in our country, where even when a police officer arrests you, it's the language alone is threatening?
Yeah, I'm sure by now I can imagine Adam Bona, wherever he is, if he's still with us, he will be beating his fingers, because this is a $1 million question that you just asked. One has got to do with their training. Two is got to do with recruitment. Okay, I heard I think a regional minister this evening on radio saying that there were known members of an allegedly, and I'm saying allegedly, disbanded vigilante group, known members of a disbanded group that's alleged to have been disbanded, have been recruited into the national security, scheme of things.
You're referencing the Ashanti regional incident?
Yes. And when I was taking a shower, when I heard that, I had to put off the shower, stop, literally freeze in the bathroom to listen to him. Look, elsewhere in the States, even if you have a traffic violation on your record, you have no place in the public safety department. You have no place. You have no place. And here in Ghana, we are comfortable to even talk about it, that people who have applied themselves in acts of vigilantism, we are proud to say that we have recruited them into the National Security Ministry, a ministry that have literally unfettered powers. It should never be. What sort of screening have we done to recruit such thugs into the National Security Ministry or the security architecture? It is dangerous. It is something that as a country we should not entertain. We must frown on it. And if it is true that members, people who are on file, known as vigilantes, who once upon a time gave all of us headache in this country, have been recruited into the national security architecture, we must expunge them fast. It is dangerous.
But if a ministry supervising the activities of these individuals knows about the existence of some of these vigilante folks in the security apparatus, and they assent to it for it to go on, then what do we do?
Well,
because if you remember the case of the Ayawasto West Wagon incident, when the gentleman Double was there, the senior security personnel who came there, virtually all they said was to admit that he was one of them.
Let me tell you something. Sometime January 2019, the Bureau wrote to the Minister of Justice, Attorney General, copied to the Interior Minister, and I think at another ministry. Per the Vigilantism and Other Related Offences Act, they listed about 34 or so vigilante groups, all of which groups are supposed to be disbanded with the passing of the law. And the things that were supposed to be effected in order to seal the ban or validate the ban was for all these, the members and the leaders of all of these vigilante groups, their names would be lodged with the Interior Ministry and the Ministry of Justice. Look, let's pull out. If we wrote to them requesting that, have these things been done? Because it's easy for anyone to come and tell me on radio or TV that, look, we have banned vigilantism. All these groups have been outlawed now. It's been disbanded. The only thing that assures me that the groups have been disbanded and their members are under bond to behave well is for you, the ministry, to provide the names to the public. That look, this is Delta Force, this is what are those ones associated with the NDC?
The Burger Bulldogs.
The Burger Bulldogs, all those. These are them. Here are the members. So we know. So tomorrow, if we see one of them anywhere or one of them misbehaving, we know that this person signed a bond to be of good behavior and is misconducting himself.
When you wrote to them,
today,
what feedback did you get?
Nothing came. Nothing came.
So then the state seems to be in cahoots with.
Well, that's why we believe that the groups having been disbanded just exist in the act. Actually, the Minister of Interior today cannot list for me 10 members officially, so that he has in records at his ministry that these are members of X group, these are members of Y group, these are members of A group. Nothing like that exists. If it existed, they would have made us known. We were not asking for the names. We were just asking, let us know whether you have their names, so that tomorrow we can put you your feet to the fire. This person is a well-known member of a vigilante group. What is he doing in our at the National Security Institution, a sensitive institution at that?
All right. Now we'll go for a short breather, and then when we come back, I'm sure those of you who are following the conversation know the premise for which we are having this conversation. One has to do with the recent incident in the Ashanti region where a national security coordinator was attacked by, alleged Delta Force members who identified themselves as national security operatives, and then the incident of the assault on a colleague journalist. Now, when we come back, I will speak to Mr. Brouhaha and ask him, how do I identify a national security installation? What is and what is not? Stay with us. We'll be back. And you're welcome back. This is Fact Sheet live on eTV, live on Facebook as well. Every Tuesday evening, 8 to 9 p.m. we discuss issues of national interest. Tonight, we are talking about the security of our nation, Ghana. Oh, again, should I say, the insecurity in our country. Now, Mr. Brouhaha, I'll come to you with the question. What is a national security installation? And
it just turned me on.
all right, let me rephrase. What I was asking was, what constitutes a national security installation? How do we as citizens know? And does the poster of no picture, no video suffice?
Well, yes, Samuel. What constitutes national security installation? Sometimes you don't need no video, no picture to tell you this is a national security installation. There are, for instance, so let's say the Wager Dam. The Wager Dam is a major national security installation. The reason why it's a major national security installation is because it serves the people of Accra, largely the people of Accra, a large amount of water, drinking water. So anyone who gets there and pours any chemical that could kill people into it, it's obviously a threat. If you take the Pong Waterworks or Pong Dam, that's a major national security installation. If you take Akosombo Dam, that's a major national security installation. If you take the Tema Port, or our ports. These are major national security installations. Then you narrow it down to the seat of the president's own where he stays, and then the president himself, and people around. These are, call them national security. These are people you don't have to unnecessarily go closer to. So to just say, because I put a no picture, no video there, that makes it a national security installation. No, a national security installation would have to be properly defined by law. And so mine is that that incident where Caleb and those people were arrested. My question is that, is the National Security Ministry itself a national security installation? The fact that it is a ministry or a secretariat does not actually make it a national security installation. It doesn't make it a national security installation. And so people are looking at it, because if I probably went in there and tried filming some documents, trying to do some espionage, trying to, if there are some explosives, some state secrets, and those things are kept there, if there is a reason to say that because it's the National Security Ministry, there maybe we have the layout of Ghana, our oil fields, all the layout is there. And so when I go there, I might be stealing information that terrorists might want to use to harm us. Therefore, that place becomes a national security installation. And so then my question is that, so let's take one of the national security installations in this country is Burma Camp, and the military bases we have, Mishra Camp. These installations are hosting explosives. These installations have military aircraft. These installations have, call it military accoutrement. And so once you are entering into that zone, you would have to be, checked, profiled properly to ensure that you are not going in there and you are going to be doing things that are not untoward. And so as for what constitutes national security, installation, they are numerous. I mean, you can, let's say recently, was it this year, the whole of Ghana went blackout. As to how that happened, I know that the whole of Ghana went blackout, and some of us felt if anybody had decided to do anything, could do it. Let me tell you another national security installation, or another thing that we haven't looked at. Communication in this country today. The largest, I don't want to promote any, but the largest communication company in this country with the largest subscriber. That company is itself a national security installation, and their basis. And so anybody who wanted to create chaos in this country could decide to dig out all of this, what do you call it, cell sites. Okay, he will bring down all the cell sites. And so communication from where I come from, from the Upper West region to Accra is cut off. From Accra to those places cut off. Is the reason why we have a network for communication amongst our security officers. And that network is not, they don't route it through the private telecom companies. And so mine is that if recently if you had the minister of Madam Esla, ministry, is it communication, when she said they would have to relook at these networks that have so many subscribers. In other places, you will not be allowed. Because assuming tomorrow that network decided to pull out, you see what happened to Tigo. When Tigo decided to pull out, the state had to quickly, and so communication is still going on. And so what constitutes national security installation? Keep changing. We keep having additions, But you see, we don't seem to have a blueprint of what will constitute national security installation. But from any researcher like me, from where I sit, I can tell you that, you know what, there are several, is a reason why they call it even the water bodies. The President of the Republic, by executive order, says that destroy mining equipment. You know what, some of us have predicted that if we do not protect our water bodies, what will happen is that the day we run out of water, that itself is going to be a disaster. We'll begin to cut ourselves because we need drinking water.
Right.
And I'm sure
that
yes.
I'm sorry, but I need to interrupt you for a second and, prompt my guests because our time is far exhausted. And I believe that what would be most appropriate would be for us to continue this conversation because, we were going to have a look at the way forward in terms of what goes into recruitment of national security operatives and many more angles to the issue of national security. But unfortunately, our time is run out and we would need to wrap up our conversation this evening. Now, the purpose of this conversation was to make us understand and appreciate the work of the National Security Ministry, national security operatives, our rights as citizens of this country, activities of these national security operatives. If God gives us another opportunity next week, Tuesday, now we are going to delve into the issue of these operatives, how they are recruited into the various outfits they may be in, and the way forward as a country, if indeed we want to avoid some of these pitfalls that we have been experiencing in our national security sector. My name is Samuel Ishen, and tonight I was joined by Nanaya Akwada and Mr. Adams Bona. I am hoping that you stay even as Mercy B comes on with her guest to discuss very, very interesting discussions tonight. Let's make a date tomorrow for the repeat broadcast of the show. Good night.